I'm going into year 11 this year and unfortunately school starts very soon, so I wanted to share some of my tips for year 10 and how to survive it. Honestly, I think that there's such a jump between year 9 and year 10, so you have to be completely prepared for it. So I'm going to share just how I got through it and some of my advice for getting through it. I do have a list on my laptop of all my advice so that I didn't forget anything. Okay, I'm going to try and split this video into 2 sections. So the first section is going to be about friendships, relationships, drama, all that kind of stuff, and then the second section is going to be about actual schoolwork and studying, all that kind of stuff. Okay, starting with friendships and drama. Honestly, I feel like this was the hardest bit for me. The social part of school is what I really struggle with, because I feel like everything, it changes. The complete dynamic of your year group changes when you move from year 9 to year 10, and I cannot explain why that happens, but it does. So my first piece of advice sounds really harsh and unnecessary, but it isn't. It's fully truthful, and it is really necessary to keep this in mind the entire school year, and that is to accept that your friendships aren't going to last forever. Your secondary school friends aren't all going to be with you forever, and that's not to say that some of those friendships won't last, but I'm just saying that a lot of the people that you make friends with now and who are in this huge friend group, you have to kind of accept that they're not necessarily all going to be there long term. And I think that's so necessary because it means that you don't have to take friendship breakups so seriously and personally. Because I know from experience, if I have ever grown apart from someone, or if I've just completely cut off contact with someone, I take it very personally. It's a very emotional experience, I think. And also, that's just saying not everyone is going to be the perfect match for you. Not everyone is going to be your best friend. And I think that's the hardest thing to come to terms with, or at least it was for me, because I fully expected to get along perfectly with everyone and to share everyone's exact interests, but that just isn't realistic. Not everyone is going to get along with you. You're not going to get along with everyone. You're not necessarily going to even like people that you're meant to like, but that's not as important as you'd think it is. And that leads on to my next point about just sometimes how you have to tolerate people. You're not going to love everyone, and not everyone's going to love you, and to make your year as peaceful and unstressful as possible, you just need to tolerate some people, and you need to accept that not everyone is going to be a good person. Not everyone is going to be nice. And I think from my experience, the more you tolerate people, the more they'll tolerate you, which just makes it easier because, you know, if you have the majority of your year group who don't really mind you, it makes things a lot easier than if everyone is against you because you just can't tolerate them. And as hard as it is, I think sometimes you just have to be the bigger person in that sense. Even if someone has done something you really disagree with, I think going around saying things to them, having an outward opinion, I think that just doesn't get you anywhere. And I think that's the case in everything. I think if someone's done something really terrible, horrible, just something really mean, yes, you need to call them out on it, but I think that sometimes there's just nothing you can do about it. Some people are just mean and some people are horrible and there's nothing you can do about it. I think most of the time those people will grow from it. I mean, there are people that I knew in year 7 who were absolutely horrible people. I feel like they've grown a bit over the past few years, and I think that's just what everyone goes through. I think everyone goes through some kind of personal growth, and you need to just tolerate them through that growth. If that makes any sense, I hope that makes sense. Okay, my next piece of advice is that not all drama is absolutely valid and not all drama is important. I think that there are always certain situations where there seems to be drama that's like, oh my god, everyone needs to care about this and we all need to get involved in this, and actually it's either not true or it's just not that big of a deal. I think a lot of the time situations are dragged out and they are exaggerated to make them seem worse than they are. I think that you need to listen to different people's viewpoints on this, and you need to kind of put yourself in someone else's shoes. You need to consider their feelings and their experiences. I know that there have been very specific situations this year in my school where things have happened with certain people, and I'd happen to know things about these people that could cause the drama, if that makes sense. And I think it just made me realize that there is always a reason behind everyone. There's a reason behind people doing these things, and there's also a reason behind people spreading the information and the drama. I think that there's always a reason behind drama, whether it's valid or not valid. Most of the time, just ignore it. Just don't involve yourself in drama because you will regret it. Reflecting on different things that you've done, you will regret spreading information, potentially spreading misinformation, contributing to people feeling bad about themselves, contributing to people feeling like they can make other people feel bad about themselves. Kind of related to my last point, don't let drama make you a horrible person. I know people who have concerned themselves with drama that doesn't necessarily involve them, doesn't concern them, and it has changed them so much, and I honestly attribute a lot of it to drama. I'd like to point out, if there's anyone I know watching this video, which I hope there isn't, but there will be, this isn't a personal attack on anyone. I'm just saying in general, and especially anyone I'm close friends with, this does not apply to you. This is just you know, general advice. This doesn't apply to specific people really. But anyway, my point is drama makes you a horrible person if you let it, and you will regret being involved in it because it will stress you out. I know it's not always the easiest thing. I know people tend to validate like gossip and drama. It's absolutely not valid to gossip about people. I don't think gossip that is actively mean towards people without a reason is ever going to be valid. My next one is kind of a more light-hearted point because it's not as philosophical, I guess. Don't let people drain the life out of you, because I have seen so many people in so many situations just completely let people take their spark and their energy, their personality, whether that's in friendships, relationships, anything. And I think my main rule with these things is don't let yourself put more energy into a relationship that you are giving back. If you let one specific friendship, relationship, whatever, if you let it drain you, you have a lot less energy to spend on other relationships. I've had a few friendships that are like this. I think it just took so much energy out of me. It really prevented me from spending time with the people that I would choose to spend time with now. I did not have the energy to put in energy, if that makes sense. So in toxic friendships, relationships, it is usually mutually as bad for each person. A toxic friendship is probably draining the other person just as much as it's draining you, and I think just some people aren't meant to be together in a friendship or a relationship, or they just need to grow a bit before they are in that relationship. I'm hoping this will make sense because I'm trying to explain it in a way that's like understandable. The next point of advice is about dating. I don't have a lot of experience in this, especially because I had one straight relationship and it lasted for a month. But I have seen a lot of situations with certain relationships that have really taught me a lot of lessons. The first one is don't feel pressured to date anyone. I know that for me, I didn't necessarily feel a lot of pressure to have a relationship, but I felt a lot of pressure to have a crush, if that makes sense. And this was fully exacerbated by the fact that it took me a while to figure out that I was queer and I didn't only want to be in straight relationships, and I would fully just make crushes up. I'd just say, oh yeah, I like this person, and I actually didn't. I had no feelings towards them, but I felt like that's what I was expected to do, and obviously there's nothing objectively wrong with that. It isn't harming anyone. I think if you're constantly doing this, it just doesn't allow you to actually like someone because, you know, you've already made this other person up in your head. And I find that a lot of relationships I've seen that start out of kind of social convention, they end up going nowhere, and these people actually do not even like each other a lot of the time. They would never hang out with each other if they weren't dating. I've only seen this with like straight couples. I don't think there's been a single queer couple since year 7, because that was during the era of like being queer was accepted, and I think that was a great era. That was like everyone was fully themselves, if that makes sense, and I think that everyone was so open about that. And there were a few queer relationships. I think I wasn't really hanging out with a lot of people at that time, but now I only see straight relationships. That's besides the point though. I think that a lot of these relationships, a lot of them do start out of genuine feelings for each other, and I think that's amazing, but I also think that a lot of them start because people are expected to be in a relationship, and it either lasts a month or it lasts forever, and these people just never talk to each other. They just have the label of being together. This is not specifically targeted at anyone, this is just general advice. And also I think that when people are in these relationships that they don't really need or want to be in, they also can't put as much effort into genuine friendships and relationships, and also if they're constantly stuck with this person, they can't really reflect on who they do want to date, who they don't want to date, what kind of person they want to date. I think it's just never beneficial to force yourself to be in a relationship. Obviously, if you actually have feelings for a person and you actually want to be in a relationship, great, go for it. Like, there's no problem in that. Now moving on from the kind of social aspect and onto the actual schoolwork, education side of things, I will start this by saying year 10 is the year you actually have to take seriously. I see a lot of mixed opinions on this, especially on like social media and everything, but in my opinion, you have to take year 10 seriously. And I'm not saying you have to stress yourself out and constantly revise, constantly study, but you don't need to stress yourself out in year 10. You just need to pay attention. I think the most important thing is paying attention and making GCSE resources. I think people forget that half of your GCSE coursework is going to be in year 10. You are fully learning what you're going to have to take an exam on in a year. And I know teachers go on about this so much, but I think people really forget that you do need to pay attention, otherwise you'll have to relearn the entirety of year 10 in like 2 or 3 months, which just isn't realistic and isn't helpful. So I think the most important thing is taking any notes you need to, do all your schoolwork, do all your homework, and I think the most important thing is making resources. So like flashcards, notes, whatever you need to do, just make resources that you will be able to use when you need to revise those topics in year 11. So what I do is, as I go on for each topic, I write it down in summarized notes, which isn't necessary, but I just find it helpful, and I write flashcards on it, which I think is the most helpful thing because it's active recall. You're actively putting that information in your brain, and if you're doing it gradually throughout the year, you are going to be so much less stressed when it actually comes to your real exams. And to be completely just blunt and honest, you are going to fall behind if you don't pay attention. That's just the truth of it. If you don't pay attention to a single lesson in year 10, you just kind of wait until year 11 to take things seriously, you're gonna fall behind. That's like the honest truth. Again, you don't need to overwork yourself and you don't need to constantly worry about GCSEs. That's not what you need to do in year 10, but you do need to revise any topics that you don't understand so that you don't have to try and do it all later on. And you do need to make some kind of resources, whatever works for you. I think year 10 is really the year where you need to work out what study methods work for you, what websites work for you, what your best and worst subjects are. Because I mean, year 7, 8 and 9, you won't need a lot of that content, to be completely honest. I think maths, science and English, you might need that year 7, 8, 9 content, but after that there is not really any content that you need. So year 10 is when you need to fully start fresh and learn everything properly. The next one is to really keep on top of everything and be organized, whether that's using a planner, using Notion, just writing everything down in lists, whatever you need to do, like assignment trackers, anything that keeps you on top of everything and make sure that you actually get everything done. Anything like that is going to help you. For me, I use Notion and I also use a planner, like a physical paper planner. I bring my planner to school so that I have like exam dates, homework dates, event dates, everything like that, because I have the worst memory ever. So just make sure that everything's written down, everything has a place. Make sure that you're putting all your stuff in places that you're going to remember. If you're making physical notes, put them in folders or put them in some kind of organization system, otherwise you are going to lose them and you are not going to remember that you made those in year 11. And I think honestly, if you don't have a set organization system, you're going to stress yourself out so much more and you're just going to unnecessarily put more pressure and work on yourself. Okay, my next piece of advice is honestly the easiest one I've given out so far, and that's to use YouTube tutorials for literally everything. For me, I usually use them in history and maths. History just because I'm a more visual learner and I like the little animation videos where they have everything on the screen. And I also use it a lot for maths because I'm not great at maths. I need a visual representation. I really hate my maths class because I can't focus on anything. So I use maths tutorials a lot on there. Specifically for science, if you need science videos, use free science lessons. The thumbnails look boring. I know that they look so boring. I literally skip past them so many times, but for science, they're genuinely the biggest lifesaver ever. The next thing, I kind of touched on this earlier, make sure that you know what study methods you like and what works best for you. I would strongly discourage you from using the Pomodoro method. I know some people say that it works really well for ADHD. I don't have any experience in that, so try it out. By all means, try it out. I tried it out. It's not for me. I don't think that it is always the most productive method. I know that it's hyped up a lot on social media. I find that if you are already in that kind of zone of studying and your timer goes off, like you can stop now, that kind of interrupts your flow of learning and you're less likely to learn more stuff. I think it's definitely important to take breaks, especially because your brain needs breaks to kind of digest and process all the information you've just revised. I don't think generally the Pomodoro method is the greatest way to do that. Two study methods that I absolutely live by and I highly recommend are active recall, which is basically just making sure you're not like highlighting a textbook, reading over notes, or the kind of passive study methods that aren't really getting into your brain. You'll maybe remember 10-20% of the information. Active recall is where you're actively posting information in your brain and you're going to remember it long term. So this is things like blurting, flashcards, anything like that. I definitely recommend searching it up. Search up active recall methods and it will kind of explain everything to you. And also the Feynman method, which is basically a fancy way of saying just pretend you're teaching someone the content. Okay, sorry about the lighting and angle change. My camera literally died. I have my crochet stuff out and I can't be bothered to put it away, so it's staying there. Carrying on from my last point, Feynman method is basically just pretending you're talking to someone. Literally just like what I do is I just stare at my wall and pretend that I'm talking to someone and teaching them the entire topic with no notes or anything. Or sometimes I'll like write on my whiteboard at the same time. Like, it does work, it genuinely works, and I don't know why. I think because you have to kind of rephrase things into your own words, I think it kind of puts it in your mind. I don't know the psychology behind it, but I know that it works. So those are my main two methods for studying. I know there are way more and I know that different things work for different people, so definitely use year 10 as kind of an experimental year. Use it to find out what works for you and what doesn't. That's my biggest advice. If there's one takeaway from this entire video, that's definitely it. Use year 10 as an experimental year. Find out your friends, find out your best subjects, worst subjects, everything like that. Just experiment with everything in year 10 to an extent. Obviously, don't take that out of context. Last but not least, my favorite websites. I'm going to take you through a few of them because genuinely studying is so much easier when you have the right resources, tools, websites. The first one is BBC Bitesize. BBC Bitesize is one of my favorites because you know that everything is true and correct on there and up to date. When you get into year 10, you'll be told use BBC Bitesize for anything, for research, anything. And I think, to my knowledge, they have every single topic on there. I don't know how many exam boards they have on there, but I think they have most of them, if not all of them. Next one is Physics and Maths Tutor, or if you just search up PMT, it will come up too. Obviously they have physics, maths, but they also have chemistry and biology. I use them for a lot of past papers. They also have pre-made flashcards and summary notes. I know when I did my year 10 mock exams, I used their summary notes for so many things. And like I said, I don't think there's been a topic in like science that I haven't been able to find on there. The next one is Save My Exams. Quite literally, Save My Exams. The only downside is that you get like, I think it's 5 free revision notes a week and then you have to pay for it. It's not really necessary to pay for it. It could be helpful if you have the money and you want to pay for it. The next one is No Unity. I actually don't use this one as much as I use the other ones, but it's definitely really helpful. So No Unity kind of gives you like notes for specific things, so there'll be pre-made notes and you don't have to write them out yourself. This one I would suggest using in moderation. I think this one is only useful when you're like nearer to your exams. I think that actually writing notes yourself kind of helps to put it in your brain a bit more. So I think if you can write your own notes just for memorization purposes, but if you are like super close to your exam and there's a specific topic that you haven't written notes on, definitely I would suggest No Unity. I will say though, there are a few topics that I just couldn't find at all for my science mocks. Next is Seneca. I don't know if this is specifically like a school thing. I think some schools have it, some schools don't, but they literally have every topic and they have pre-made notes and then they also have quizzes you answer. I think I put off using Seneca for a very long time because I got set so much homework on there. So I think the amount of homework I got on Seneca put me off using it because I was just completely done with it. But then during my year 10 mocks, I realized how helpful it was and I use it like all the time now. The same thing goes for Sparks Maths, and I know everyone is going to hate me for this because I hate Sparks Maths too. Sparks Maths is my #1 enemy, but their independent learning feature is really, really useful. You get questions, you get the videos, you get different levels, you get different exam boards, different years. It's super helpful, and I hate to say that because I despise Sparks Maths. My 2 favourite flashcard websites are Gizmo and Quizlet. Quizlet I only really use for Spanish because my Spanish teacher uses Quizlet, but the thing with Quizlet is you only get a certain amount of cards that you can do for free until you have to pay, and I think they only changed this a few years ago, but it's super annoying. I prefer Gizmo over Quizlet just because Quizlet doesn't give you a lot of chances. You can do a certain amount of cards and then if you don't pay you have to wait a certain amount of time. So both of those sites kind of have upsides and downsides. So I think they're all of my tips. It does seem like a lot and I know I've made it sound really, really scary, but year 10 doesn't feel as stressful and serious once you're actually in it. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. It is going to be hard, same as any other year, but I think if you're prepared for it, it makes it just that bit easier. Probably the next time that you will see me, I will be in year 11 stressing about GCSEs.